Hello.
I'm Daniel,
Ciao.
this is Anne, and we will give the next presentation. I will share my screen. So Anne and I, we studied in Eberswalde, that's a small town close to Berlin, and we wrote our master thesis as a team. So we just graduated 2 months ago, and the topic of our master thesis was the debate on the Oder River regulation in the German-Polish border region. And we used a special tool to visualize all the arguments and the debate around this planned river regulation. So you probably are aware of this map. So this is the Baltic Sea, and we just want to briefly show you when the Oder River is here. So it would be right in between Germany and Poland, entering the Baltic Sea in Polish territory. So that's why it's relevant for the Baltic Sea as well. And so this is a brief outline of what we would like to talk about. So we want to have a short introduction and a quiz. And then we move to the methodology. So how did we proceed with our data acquisition and analysis? And then we want to show you our results and discuss a little bit with you as well.
Okay, so we're gonna continue with the quiz. Not sure if you all know Mentimeter. Unfortunately, that didn't work, but we can do it without this tool, I think. So first question was how long the Oder River is along the German and Polish border. Option A would be 162 kilometers. Option B would be 483 kilometers, and option C would be 75 kilometers. You can just speak out loud if you think you know the answer.
I will be silent here because I'm not a person, so I don't want to compete.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so the correct answer would be 162 kilometers. So that's the border section of the Oder River. And maybe we just sum up with the second question. We wanted to ask where the Oder originates, in which country. Is it Slovakia, Ukraine, or Czechia? Does anyone have an idea?
Okay, would have been Czechia, Czech Republic, and the last question.
Maybe we skipped the last question.
we looked at rare fish species, and we're wondering which fish species can be found. So we had the northern golden loach, the sturgeon, and also the burbot. And surprisingly, all of those rare species can be found in the Oder. So we have a lot of protected species still in this river. We're going to continue with our.
If I can have some question at this point, because you said about the sources of Oder. Have you been there?
No.
Unfortunately, not. No, we haven't not yet seen it. Have you been there before?
Not yet, but I'm planning to go there. So just from curiosity, because I know that it's very like specific area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we haven't seen it ourselves until now. Okay, we're gonna continue with our slides.
Okay, so I'm gonna give overview of the methodology of our master thesis. And therefore, I would like to introduce you the region we focused on. So as you saw in our title, we focus on the German-Polish border region. And on the left image, you can see the rectangle of roughly our region. So that's the border Oder on the German and the Polish side. And it also shows you the river course of the Oder River. So as we just explained that it originates in Czechia, then flows through Poland, demarks the Polish-German border, and then re-enters Polish territory before it flows into the Baltic. And on the right-hand side, you can see a zoomed-in version of our region. And we also marked some of the political entities on the German as well as on the Polish side. So on the German side, we have federal states and then smaller entities. They are like districts. Similarly, we have 2 districts on the Polish side of the river. So one of the key issues in this debate and the river regulation plans is inland navigation. So one of the main goals to regulate the river is to allow larger ships on the Oder River. And this map may seem a little bit confusing, but all you need to know, all I want to show you is that from south to north, the shipping classes, they gradually increase. So you can see in the right bottom corner, we can see a rather low shipping class, and then when we reach the German-Polish border, it increases. That means it allows larger ships, and then right before it enters the Baltic Sea, even larger ships are allowed. And so this section is supposed to be regulated to allow larger ships on the Oder River.
It's also important to know a bit about the debate background itself. So we focused on the debate or the discussion rising around the Oder-Wisła flood management project. But this single project also is based on a Polish and German state treaty from 2015. So it's a treaty between both countries, and both signed it, and they determine different weak points along the river and plan to improve the waterway condition. And the Oder-Wisła flood management project claims to increase the flood protection in this region. And they mentioned that there must be a certain water depth to allow the icebreaker fleet to drive and to clear the water in case of ice in wintertime. In 2014, there was a current control concept that also analyzed the river and tried to determine those weak points that must be addressed now. But this concept didn't include the climate change and didn't really look at a lot of environmental issues. And still it highlighted that there must be a continuous monitoring if there might be some negative effects also on the flood protection, especially in summertime. So now we look closer at the methodology. How did we proceed in our master thesis? We had combined 2 different approaches. We looked at the media. So we did a media research and collected 78 articles from 38 different media outlets. And here in this graph, you can see all the articles that we collected and that we had a look on. Blue marked are the German articles, and the Polish articles are colored in orange. So you can see clearly that there's a big difference between German and Polish articles that we found, which might also be due to our lack of Polish language knowledge. And it was easier for us to research for German articles. But maybe you can also tell us more if there's a high number of Polish articles available that we were not aware of. And we can also see a clear increase in articles in the recent years. So in 2020 and 21, there's large number of articles published. And I must also say that the number from 2021 is only includes articles until mid of March, because that was the end of our data collection. And we started looking at articles from 2015 on, since that was the year of this signature of the state treaty between Germany and Poland on the improvement of the waterway conditions along the Oder. As a second data source, we looked at different interview partners. So we conducted qualitative, semi-structured interviews, and we tried to include various stakeholder groups and different interest groups. Here in this circular graph, you can see different stakeholders that we talked to. we can see a large share of environmental groups or environmental activists marked in green. But we also talked to scientists, especially freshwater and ecology scientists. We also had interviews with inland navigation representatives, tourism experts, agriculture, also business development, and different public authorities. They also account for a large share. Even though we try to somehow depict a really balanced picture from different stakeholder groups, we can still see that there's a bias towards environmental groups, which might also be due to our already existing network in this context. And it was easier to find people willing to talk to us from those sectors. We also tried to talk to the project initiators from the Otra Flood Management Project, but it was really hard to get into touch with them and to get answers from them, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I will continue with the methodology. Anne just explained with whom we talked about the Oder River, and I would like to explain how we extracted arguments from the data we collected. So our research is based on the theory of critical thinking, and you can think of it as a technique to evaluate statements. And in the interviews we recorded, we've looked for attempts to convince, and an argument must consist of minimum one premise and one conclusion. And here I have an example for you. I'm just going to read out the three premises. There are rare fish species in the Oder. Rare species should be protected. And the last premise, the Oder River regulation will harm rare fish species. And the conclusion would be the Oder River regulation should be stopped. So that's how we extracted the argument. So we needed a clear framework how to extract arguments and how to reconstruct them. And it's also important to know that we can make a statement if an argument is valid or not. In this case, it would be valid because when all the premises are true, the conclusion would be true as well. But we wouldn't make a decision whether it's true or not. So because we collected so many arguments, we didn't have the capacity to research every premise and every conclusion, whether it is true or not. So we just make a statement whether it's valid or not, which is a difference in this theory. How did we go from the individual arguments to the argument map? So the argument map, this is our main result of our thesis. And here I have a sketch for you to show you how an argument map is structured. I will show you our argument map in the next slides, but here it's just a quick example. So there's always one main statement. In our case, the main statement would be the Oder River regulation should be pursued as planned. And then we have supporting and attacking arguments. You can see it here on the right-hand side. And then these arguments, again, they can have supporting and attacking arguments. It will become clearer in the next slides, I hope. So I will move on to our results. So this is how the argument map would look like in the end. So this is our main result. As I just said, the main statement is in the middle. And then we have a first layer of pro and contra arguments around the main statement. For example, one argument could be that the Oder River regulation is contradicting European nature conservation objectives. If we go more into detail here, then we can see our two premises, that there's the German Water Framework Directive, and the goals of the Water Framework Directive cannot be reached if the Oder River regulation plans are pursued as planned, and the conclusion then would be the project should be stopped. So here we wanted to show you how the individual arguments are structured. For this presentation, we want to use an interactive version of the argument map, and you can see the link here. Now, this is the first layer of arguments, and then you can see like a headline, and when you click on it, so we can click on the one that just showed you, for example, we can see the underlying arguments as well. And then when you click on this icon, you will get back to the main argument map. And how it works is you can see the argument map, the argument, and then underlying arguments. So it's an interactive version, and on this website you will be able to discuss the debate here as well. So you will be able to comment on arguments and weigh them, and this is a nice option to work with debates like that.
Yeah, as next task, we have a few questions that you could work with in this interactive tool in Kialo. So it would be important that you can all open the link that we post into the chat. And then we would have a closer look at 4 key arguments that we found. In total, we determined 8, but for now, we just want to look at 4 because it's easier and simplifies it a bit. And important would be arguments 2.2, 4.1, 5.2, and 6.1. So you can have a look at the slide and see the numbers, and then search them in our argument map in Kialo. Okay, so if you clicked on an argument and you see the argument itself and you want to get back to the big map, you must click to the left on the top and find a small map again. Click on it, and then you're back in the first view. And then you can go again.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So one of key argument was like 2.2, contradicting European nature conservation objectives. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. And then another one would be 4.1, directly next to it. So you can just take your time and scroll a bit through the map. 5.1 would be flood risk mitigation. So the question if the flood risk is actually increasing or improving through the project. Mm-hmm. And 6.1, the economic development in the region. That's an argument, looking at economic development and stating that there could be improvement for the region, and if there's more inland shipping and if the river will be regulated. But if we look in the next layers, we can see different arguments supporting or in orange attacking the key argument. And the task would be, we have a few questions prepared for you. You can have a look at those. And we were wondering, which of those key arguments would you consider the most relevant regarding the status of eutrophication in the Baltic? So we want to find a bridge towards the eutrophication topic, and there might be different connections. Maybe you can have a look at those, and we have 2 more questions that we can discuss afterwards. But the first one, the most relevant one, would be the one regarding the eutrophication in the Baltic. If you have questions, you can always speak up and ask us.
We would allow you maybe 5 minutes to take your time to go through the interactive map, and then we can start our discussion.
So maybe I will reflect with point 3.7 in this question. That means recreational value, but in particular of like ecosystem services. I mean, not only recreational value, but also the value for agriculture. Yes, because part of Odra basin are related to agriculture land. So I guess it will affect the agriculture users as well. So that's some connections to our topic, to the first question, I would say.
Mm-hmm. 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 we talked to agriculture representative and also asked him about his perception on the availability of water in the region, and he didn't seem to be too concerned about the water availability, and he did not mention himself the matter of eutrophication of the river and also its impact in the sea. So we found that he was really interested in the thesis and the topic itself, but also wanted to learn more about it. So I think that the information for people along the river might not always be available easily.
Yes, I can just add from my other experience that like official information about the regulation of the Odra River, it's allowed from like government side, but it's not easily I wouldn't say available, because you can reach it via website, but it's not people are not aware of the consequences of this project, no, like overall, and not aware of the consequences for them, like for farmers or for tourism entrepreneurship and like this kind of branches or other river stakeholders. So it's rather like general knowledge that something is going on or planned on the river, but I don't think that there is a knowledge that kind of what it will bring to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had the same experience throughout our process of interview and data collection. We found some people that were very well informed about the topic and already worked on the topic for a while, but it seemed like the Odra development and the management of the river itself seems to be like a rather underground topic. Not many people are informed even in the region. And those people that were supporting the project plans, it seemed like they had a different understanding of natural processes, or lacking understanding for some process maybe even as well. And they were following different interests. So that refers to our second question: which goals are represented in the arguments by the different groups? And we also have some quotes that I can show you in the next slides, that we saw that the different stakeholder groups just follow different aims, and there might be a lack of understanding among each other. So we had, there was another argument I'm going to show later. We had one interviewee arguing that he said, obviously, we don't want to destroy anything there in the river, but potentially create new habitats. Maybe in the future, something completely different may evolve. And that's what's colliding with the environmentalists. They only want to preserve and not change. We also want to change because we see that something new can develop out of it. In the end, maybe one fish species won't be there anymore, but other species may settle there. But environmentalists don't think that far because they only want to preserve what is already there. So there was a representative from an inland shipping club, and we also had a response towards this argument that there might be new things evolving, new fish species settling in the Odra River if the river is regulated. And we talked to an ecologist and freshwater expert. He said that the declared goal is to stop the loss of biodiversity in freshwater bodies. In the Odra, we have the only self-reproducing population of Wanderschnäbel. We unfortunately couldn't find English translation for this fish, but a really rare species, and one of the largest burbot populations in Germany. And the carp bream or white bream, other fish species, which would maybe replace those species, are fish species existing here everywhere. So it's not only important that we have any fish in the water, but it's a qualitative feature which fish species those are. So he is highlighting that we must look at also the different species that we can find regarding to biodiversity and the resilience of the whole ecosystem. That was really interesting to see those differences and different understandings of ecosystem processes.
And what Anna just said really shows that there are very different opinions, very different aims throughout the whole group of stakeholders. So what we wanted to achieve with our thesis was to talk to lots of different people with very different opinions and hear their statements and then group them and visualize them. So that was our main goal. And what we found out is, or one of the things we found out is that they sometimes have very little understanding for the opposing stakeholders, for opposing opinions. And that's something that Anna just showed with the two quotes as well. And so one of the backgrounds is, of course, an environmental conflict here. So we see a group of people who want to develop a river, they want to regulate the river to have it more accessible for ships. And then on the opposing side, there would be, for example, environmental groups who would like to preserve the natural value of this river. And in our thesis, we also thought about how can this conflict be resolved? Can it be resolved? And what could be some strategies, or what are some ways to move forward here? And yeah, that's what we wanted to touch up on in the last question as well. How can a river management integrate goals of different stakeholders? Because it's also, yeah, it's always very challenging, I think, to integrate so many opinions. And the opinions we collected here are maybe, yeah, they are very different and they come from very different motivations. So that's something we wanted to show you as well. And I think, yeah, maybe we can move on. If you don't have any other comments or questions to our argument map, we would like to move on to the discussion of our results.
For the future, I found the name for Wanderschnäppel.
Ah,
Yeah.
That's the whitefish.
Okay.
Corymbonus lavaretus.
Good to know.
Thank you. Okay, we found a variety of different challenges throughout our master thesis and the process of analyzing this debate. For example, we had limitations of data acquisition. So what I touched upon already before, that it was hard to find or to talk to several interview partners that we would have liked to talk to, but also to access all media articles that we wanted to see. We also found a high level of subjectivity in this approach, since we had to reconstruct the arguments and there always remains certain subjectivity towards the understanding of those arguments. But to counteract this challenge, we really try to illustrate the actual debate and don't create own linkages between the arguments. So sometimes there might even be more linkages that could be drawn from one to another argument in a map, but we only connected those that were connected as such in the interviews or in the media. And we also use this cross-verification from the two data sources, so the media articles and the interviews, to really support the understanding that we had for each interview and to double check our understanding. The third challenge that we had, and probably the biggest, was the readability and the completeness of our map. So we had a lot of data and a lot of arguments, and it was really hard to depict it in one easy, readable and clear map. So we tested different forms of visualization. The one that you seen now is the digital one in Kialo, and the interactive one, which is probably really helpful to have an interactive discussion and continue the discussion. But we also had an analog one where we had also circular depiction of our arguments, and shows the form of short titles and the description in an additional table that you could, when you can look deeper into it. Another challenge was the weighting of the arguments and the assessment in terms of which argument has a stronger position in the debate, and which argument is maybe rather a weaker one. So we didn't want you to value those arguments ourselves and let this opportunity for the reader. So we just illustrated all arguments that we could find without evaluating them. But in the Kialo tool, there's also the option, as Daniel just showed before, to weigh different arguments. That could be a tool to ask a lot of people, evaluate those arguments and find a different picture of the map then. And we referred to the authors and the articles that we cited. So it's a way to at least have a transparent overview over our arguments and how we reconstructed them, and also which background knowledge the interview had that stated this argument. Overall, we can say that the argument that we illustrated provides a comprehensive snapshot of the debate, but only a snapshot. So we finalized, or we finished our data collection mid of March this year. So until now, the debate already developed further, and there might already be more new arguments. And we conclude also that the user friendliness of the argument map should be increased. That's why we now use the Kialo tool for you and not our analog map, because it seems to be really large and hard to read on first sight. Now you can see our references, and that was our presentation, and we're happy to discuss more with you also about the topic of eutrophication and how the OTRA or which role the OTRA plays for the Baltic.
Yeah, thank you for your attention. We are happy to answer questions and discuss further.